All right, hello and welcome everybody to today's workshop. I hope you're having a lovely Sunday. Hope you're having a beautiful day like we are here in California. And I hope you are getting to the place now, wherever you're at, that you're now starting to think about what are going to be the next steps as the economy starts opening back up. And when it comes to your finances, your retirement planning, and everything in between. Because if you are, then today's workshop I think will benefit you quite highly, and I think you'll really enjoy it. What I want to let me first introduce myself. My name is Jason Hamilton. I'm a certified financial planner and the founder of Keep It Simple Financial Planning. And every Sunday at 2 p.m. Pacific Time, 5 p.m. Eastern Time, our goal is to bring you a workshop that will help you improve your financial situation and get your plan in place to retire with confidence. So hopefully you can join us each Sunday, and if not, you can just always catch the replay later on. The great thing about joining us live is that I usually do a Q&A at the end. So if you have questions along the way about what we're talking about here, I do my best to answer all questions before we wrap up for our current training for the day. So on that note, again, I hope you are doing very well, like I said today. And with some of these announcements that are going on, as far as things starting to open back up, I really think it's time to start kind of shifting our mindsets as well, and our intentions as well on how we're going to approach going into this new stage. I mentioned here on the title of the workshop here, talking about getting into the new normal. To be honest, I really don't like that phrase very much. It seems to me like it's becoming like a mind programming thing, where they're basically trying to program you to think that things need to be different, going into this next stage, and maybe they will for a little bit. But the idea that you always need to be living in fear, or things have to be drastically different in your life, I think is probably a little bit too extreme. But I want to kind of snap you out of maybe the place you're in right now. If you're feeling stuck, if you're feeling a little bit fearful on what's coming soon, if you are, thinking about retirement, or you have been thinking about retirement, and you had this whole plan in place, and now this whole coronavirus has like really thrown you for a loop and got you just kind of in a tizzy, or in a scramble of how to be, approaching your next steps here. I want to talk to you about today is some takeaways that I have from what I've seen go on in this case, and talking to dozens of people that some have done very, very well, and they put themselves in a great position for this next, for whatever's coming next, and other people that have just really had a tough time, dealing with what we're facing currently. So, I want to talk to you about some of those takeaways, and then talk about getting into this new normal, and how I want to shift your mindset of maybe how you're thinking into where I think you should be approaching this as we get into this next stage. So without further ado, let's just jump right in to what we're going to be talking about today. And as always, if along the way you have questions, you have any sort of comments about things that I'm speaking about here, feel free just to put a comment down below in the video, and I'll get to those before I wrap up for today. So let's talk about this here. All right, so today we're going to talk about 5 retirement planning takeaways from the COVID-19 crisis. You could call these 5 financial takeaways, but I've really geared this towards people that are closer to retirement. But even if you have 5, 10, 15 years until retirement, I think there's still some good stuff here for you to consider, especially when it comes around to getting your plan in order here. So let's talk about that a little bit here. All right, so as always, before we jump in, I do have to make you aware that everything I talk about today is for educational, entertainment purposes. You should not take anything I say as personal, individualized, financial, tax, or retirement planning advice. Definitely get with your financial planner, tax professional, whatever it may be. I have to put that up, okay? So let's talk about some of the things that, again, you probably already know some of these, but I think some of them as well I want to bring up to just reiterate some points, because maybe you might have forgotten about some of this stuff between when you were planning for retirement and then when this all happened. So the first thing I want to talk about is that having liquid savings is still very important, right? We have, a lot of folks out here, like I guess they say over half the country doesn't even have $1,000 of liquid cash saved. I've heard up to 60, 70%, 40%, somewhere in that range, okay? But I think we could safely say that about half the country does not have $1,000 in liquid savings put aside. I've actually talked to folks that were planning for retirement that have $500,000, $600,000, $700,000 in their retirement accounts, but have less than $3,000 of cash savings. Again, not necessarily the end of the world, because you could pull from your retirement account if you needed money. But if we're in a 30 or plus % down market and you need to pull cash out, that can be pretty detrimental and very costly, on the long term. So, the other side about having liquid savings and it being important I think we're going into a time here where the real estate market over the next probably not going to see it really for 9 months to 12 months, somewhere in that range. But if you're looking to say buy a house or buy some rental properties, for example, having liquid savings gives you the opportunity to take advantage when there's opportunities in the markets out there. Same thing when the market was down. If you looked at companies like Apple, Facebook, whatever it may be, even just purchasing the simple total stock market index, when it was down 30%, if you had cash aside and you had liquid savings that you could invest in, again, I'm not a big fan of timing the market, but hey, if the market's down 30%, you could possibly take advantage of things like that come up. Because again, if you're following certain stocks for years and years, you should know about when the right time is that you could be adding more in. And the other side of the equation too is if you have this sort of very safe money inside your retirement accounts, if the market was down 20, 30%, you could have rebalanced at that point, right? And bought more shares while the market was down, therefore lowering your average cost per share as you look at your overall portfolio investment. So there's some things there that having liquid savings would really have benefited you along the way. And if you don't have money aside, then it's really hard to do that. And, in all honesty, I think you guys might know I'm 39, going to be 40 this year. So I probably have at least 20 plus years until I even start thinking about making a transition to retirement. So I do keep, anything beyond our basic emergency fund in a very low risk investment portfolio. So I kind of practice what I preach, and when the market was down, I moved some of that to more aggressive, and my goal is for that to come back over time. I don't need the money today. And so again, these are things that, I am, what do they say? I'm eating my own dog food, as they say. What I teach you folks here is what I recommend. It's what I do at the end of the day. So I want you to know that I as well try to do my part to live with what I'm telling you here. So having liquid savings is very important. So in the traditional advice is somewhere between 3 to 6 months of an emergency fund, right? So when you look at kind of the CFP curriculum, Certified Financial Planner curriculum, they recommend 3 months if you have 2 household incomes, right? So if you have 2 solid household incomes, husband and wife or whatever it may be, spouse and spouse, then you probably can lean more towards 3 months, okay? But if you're single, you probably want to lean more towards 6 months. And if you have variable income because you're self-employed and your income might swing wildly, then you might want to normally target between 9 months to 12 months for liquid savings. My recommendation is if you're within 2 years, maybe even 3 years of retirement, that you might want to bump up and have about 24 months at a minimum, 24 to 36 months of safe money put aside. Because yes, in that short time of 2 to 3 years before retirement, you might miss out on a little bit of market gain. But at the same time, you're not going to be in a place where, something like this happens currently, and now you're talking about pushing off your retirement for another year or two. Because most likely in the next year or two, we will recover from this crisis and we'll kind of be back to normal doing the same things we were, just like we were after 2008. So having liquid savings, cash or cash equivalents in your portfolio to take advantage of opportunities and to be prepared when we do have circumstances like this so that your life can continue moving on as planned versus having to be completely shifted, I think is going to be a really good idea for you. Okay. So hopefully that helps. All right. So next thing I want to talk to you about here is that, being greedy with investments can backfire. Okay. I have seen many people that they just were riding on the coattails of the last 9 years since really 2008 happened. They had 2019 where everything was rosy and they were less than a year away from retirement. And they had, 80%, 90% plus of their assets in high risk growth investments. So things like, stock funds or, even more aggressive stock funds. Those folks got hit, okay? And they are still living in part of the recovery. As you probably know by now, I do want you to have some of your money definitely in more growth type investments. But money that you need within that in a short time period, anywhere from probably 2 to 5 years, maybe even up to 10 years, as you're getting towards retirement, it's probably better off if you're a little bit more on the conservative side. And there is actually some research. So if you want to do some research on what I'm going to tell you about here, you can actually Google Rising Equity Glide Path, okay? Rising Equity Glide Path. So what I do recommend a lot of times is when you're getting close to retirement and in the early years of retirement, to be a little bit more conservative than you might normally be. Okay, But then once you get kind of more into retirement, let's say you have both yours and your spouse's Social Security coming in, maybe your pensions are all turned on, and you don't need quite as much from your investment accounts, well, then at that point, you can actually start increasing the equities down the road when your main spending needs are not going to be pulled from your portfolio, when you have other fixed income assets to be pulling from. So the research around the rising equity glide path philosophy has shown that that has added to more security and better retirement outcomes over the long term. So, be careful being greedy. The reality of what happened recently is that many people woke up to their accounts down 30% or more starting back on February 20th. So February 20th, there was the drop started, and that continued through March 23rd, right? And after March 23rd, it started turning back around a little bit, but it was a pretty fast drop, and we were down maybe, I think, S&P, or I should say the whole stock market, because I really look at the total stock market versus S&P, which adds in small cap. But the total stock market was up about 5% at that point for the year, and then dropped down to negative like 30.6% or 31.6%, I believe, all within a matter of just about 30 days there. Okay, so being greedy can catch you, right? So you really don't want to be too greedy as you're getting close to retirement. If you got 10 years or more, be greedy. Be aggressive. Stick with an allocation that you think is within your risk tolerance, of course, but you can be a lot more aggressive when you have 10 years or more to retirement. If you're getting towards that 2, 3, or 4 year period when you want to make the exit, you probably don't want to be greedy. You probably want to be a little bit safer, because you'd be sleeping a whole lot better right now if you were, and if you were with somebody who got caught with their pants down, as they say, coming into this. So that's number 2. Okay. Number 3 is, the market can bounce back a lot faster than you think, right? So trying to time the market is still silly. I was going to say dumb, but I decided to take a step back and call it silly, because there's a lot of people that try to jump in and jump out of the market. I've talked to many people as well that pulled all their assets out at the worst time when the market was 30% down, and it's already back, not even just a couple months later here. And, we're still down a few percent, 7, 8%, okay, and then maybe 10%. But, this is really, really tough, okay? Not only do you have to be right when you pull your money out, you also have to be right when you put your money in. So going back to what I mentioned about the market dropping from February 20th to March 23rd, and it dropping just over 30% in that time period, about 30 days, within the next 3 days, from March 23rd to March 26th, the market bounced back 11% in just those 3 days, okay? So can you really get that right? Can you really tell me that you would have pulled out on February 19th, for example, and then got back in right when the market bounced back that 20%? Probably not. Okay, so let's just be really, really honest. So the strategy that I would recommend for you is that you should be creating an investment plan that you can absolutely stick with. Okay, ideally, when you have a proper allocation, when you have a proper investment plan, you're not really thinking about taking money in and out of the market. Okay, you do want to take advantage of opportunities and look at things like rebalancing. During market volatility, because ideally you're going to have maybe 8 different categories, asset classes of investments or so in your portfolio. So let's say, for example, real estate's down, but small cap US is up. Well, could you rebalance and buy a little more real estate when that's down as the small cap went up? Let's say your international was up 20% for the year and your US was down 10% for the year. Could you rebalance at that time and get back to your proper allocation? Those are smart things to do. Unfortunately, this was kind of like the whole world came crashing down, right? Everything was down during this initial punch in the face from COVID. But generally, at least in the U.S., things have mostly come back. Real estate's still definitely down. Small cap is still definitely down. But the overall U.S. market's down a little bit, but not a ton from their high. Okay, so creating an investment plan and sticking with it is very, very important. Okay, so that's number 3. Let's go here to number 4. Okay, so here's an important thing that I want you to be thinking about. Okay, I would really love if people started planning earlier than they think they need to. Okay, a lot of people come to our firm and say, they want to retire in 30 days or 90 days or something like that. Plenty of people come to us years early, right? No, so I'm not saying it's everybody, but I really want you to start thinking about planning earlier than you can expect or than you expect. Okay. And to be honest, there's a lot of people I've spoken to that they really had no plan with how this market was going to affect them. And it caused them a lot of stress. It caused them a lot of sleepless nights. It caused them a lot of worry when it came to, what if I lose my job, or what if I have to retire 6 months earlier than I expected? And by having a plan in place, I really truly believe it's one of the best things you can do for yourself. It brings peace of mind, absolutely. It brings confidence so that you know what you can do and what you can't do. And it really brings clarity to what your life would look like if you were to face some sort of retirement crisis like this. So again, when we're helping clients out, we look at things like stress tests, like if the market's down 20%, right? How is that going to affect your retirement? Or if you live 5 years longer than you expect, or if Social Security gets cut by 20%. We're going to run all these different scenarios for you so that you can have a good plan in place and really look at, what is a good things to be thinking about when it comes to the market being like this, or maybe some bad things if things are, potentially not as good as you want them to be. But at the end of the day, you really want to have a plan in place. So at a minimum, I would say you want to have your retirement plan in place at least 2 to 3 years before you plan to leave work. 5 years will be best. Okay, so ideally, like 5 years before, early as possible. Okay, so we can talk about 10 or 20 years, but a real detailed retirement game plan where you have distribution strategy, you have a plan for, all the things that are coming with that, how you're going to set up your accounts, your investments, your taxes, and things like that. 5 years would be best with annual check-ins leading up to your retirement, but a minimum of 2 to 3 years. So if you're within 2 to 3 years of retirement, even 5 years of retirement, I think you should consider seriously getting a very detailed plan in place, because this COVID thing is not going to go away. And we might experience some volatility over these next few years. And we all know that there's going to be something else that comes later, right? This is not the only big virus or health concern we've had. It's just one that has gotten a lot of media attention, has gotten way blown out of proportion is what it looks like now, versus other things we've had in the past, which were very, very bad as well, but didn't quite get the media attention on it. So, on top of that, having a plan in place is going to give you really some opportunities and really helping you understand that, what if things go great, right? So if things go great, then if you have a plan in place and I need X number of dollars to fund my retirement, and things are going great and the market's doing very well, well, maybe you can pull some off the top and do some extra spending, do some extra giving, spoil somebody that is important to you because you're ahead of schedule. If you don't have a plan, that's hard to do. On the other side, if things go poorly, right? You need to have a plan in place for if things go poorly, like what's going on right now, and what you can do. I've seen so many people make posts that saying, well, I was planning to retire this year, but now I'm working another year. But it's like, well, how do you know you have to, right? Have you really run the numbers to see if you need to work another year, or if actually you're still in good shape, and as long as you don't touch too much from your investments, then maybe you still can retire from this year and gain back that very important healthy year, right? I talk to clients about this all the time. Maximizing your early healthy years is so, so important. And I find a lot of people don't really understand what they can spend and what is safe spending early on when they're in their best years. And many, many people wait until they're in their years and maybe health has shifted to realize that they had more money than they thought. And now their health has shifted and they can't do all the things they wanted to do, and things become limited. So having a good plan in place will really let you know what you can do, what you can't do, and help you still continue your best life for whatever your situation is, whether you've saved $200,000 or $2 million. There's people all in between that retire very confidently, but there's many people that just have more than they need and don't understand if they can spend or can't spend because they don't have a plan. So, I would recommend starting a plan earlier than you expect. And then the final note on having a plan here is I would highly recommend that you have a plan in place to minimize taxes, okay? With all the stimulus that's gone on, our current tax plan that has been lower since 2016 with the TCJA, the Tax Cut and Jobs Act, this plan's only in place, locked in until about the end of 2025. Once 2026 hits, we can easily go back to what was previous, and you never know. With this amount of stimulus, it's very likely that taxes are going to be going up over time. And I would highly recommend you have a plan in place to reduce your taxes, not only today, but also take advantage of tax planning opportunities in early retirement once your income drops before your required distributions kick in, which is either 70.5 or 72, depending on your current age. So, having a plan for taxes in place is so, I cannot emphasize more that I really would love for you to have a tax planning game plan in place for that, okay? All right, and the final thing of these 5 steps before we talk about going into the new normal is that I want to recommend this. Okay. I think so many people completely forgot about how they were impacted in 2007, 2008. And within the last few years, before this COVID deal happened, they basically threw everything out the window, that happened. And they're 1, 2, 3 years away from retirement. And they just kind of got smacked by this big market downturn and completely freaked out. So I would recommend that you start a journal of the lessons that you've taken away from this crisis. Okay. So what are some of the things that you forgot about or that you might forget about as time goes on? Because as humans, we have a tendency to have what's called a recency bias, right? Where we really only remember what's happened recently. We don't really remember things that happened back in history. This is why history is so important, because usually history ends up repeating itself at some point. But it's one of those things that if you take the time to write down how you felt and reacted to this crisis, and then use this information as a guide when designing your investment plan as part of your retirement plan, to really think about, what is sort of the worst case scenario depending on your level of aggressiveness in your investment plan. I think it'd be really helpful for you over the long term. And I think if you were somebody who made a mistake and pulled out of the market at the wrong time, this is absolutely crucial. It's kind of a, something you can't really go without. So I would highly recommend you to start a journal and take some of these lessons down. The other thing to consider is, better returns sound great, right? So if you have a 80% stock portfolio versus a 40% stock portfolio, more than likely, for taking the extra risk, you are expected to have higher expected returns. And if you look at, like a software program, for example, a higher success with your financial plan, right? But if you do something like move your money out of the market at the wrong time, the long-term potential gains that you could have had from a more aggressive allocation can be destroyed in a matter of days, as we previously discussed. Because if you moved your money out when the market was down 30% and then just, a few days later it bounced back 11%, that probably is going to make your returns, even though you had the higher equities, it's probably going to hurt your returns more over time than if you just had a more of a balanced portfolio or a low risk portfolio that you can stick with and not pull out of the market when things look bad. Okay. All right. So start that journal, I would say today, as we're getting back to some of these things here. Okay. Okay. So now let's talk a little bit about transition to the new normal. Like I said, I hate this phrase. I really think the media tries to brainwash us and tries to get us to, they say something over and over and over and over. And you say this thing, the new normal, the new normal, the new normal, and how right now, at least this is how I perceive it. And I'd love to hear in the comments how you're perceiving the new normal. I perceive it now that we have to wear masks everywhere. We can't touch people. We can't hug people. We can't shake hands. We're not going to do face-to-face meetings for a while. We're not going to be able to, share that human touch that we need with loved ones and people close to us, which is so important. We have to live in a state of fear that these virus bugs are all over the place, which, by the way, the research is showing that these viruses on services are nowhere near what they thought initially. And so it has a very negative term, right? So I want to shift your new normal from being in this fear state to being one in a more positive state. Okay. So a couple of things here that, I want you to kind of be thinking about. I want you to start by being realistic. Okay. There's going to be some people that have jobs that just aren't going to come back or not going to come back for a while, right? Or they're not going to be the same at least. So for example, if you're a waiter, right? I was a server. I was a server in college, and I was making $150, $200 plus a night sometimes, working 4 to 6 hours during holiday season because people would just be packed into the restaurants. Probably not going to be like that for a while. Same thing as well. If you have other types of businesses that really rely on, very close touch or face-to-face contact, maybe you're a dentist, a chiropractor, even a lot of medical fields. There's a lot of folks right now that are getting their hours cut because there's just not as much interaction going on. So, I really want you to start being realistic there and accept that reality. And if you have a job that it doesn't look like it's going to come back or it's going to shift greatly, I want you to really embrace this and accept this reality and start moving forward. Start doing things like gaining new skills, becoming more proficient in ways to work virtually, finding ways to take whatever skill set you have and transitioning that into something that could be useful in this new area, because there's going to be so many opportunities coming out of this. So instead of thinking of all the things that you don't have that are going to go away, start to think about all the things that you do have and that can be coming when it comes into this new whatever you want to call this, okay, this new economy. Because there's going to be a lot of opportunities when it comes to things that are more online based versus being in person based. And the great thing is for many folks here listening, you probably want to think about retiring in the next couple of years, but maybe you want to work part-time because many people I know that don't want to just sit around on their couch all day and just stare at the clouds. They still want to be active. They just don't want to go to the job that they hate. So this is a wonderful opportunity to start something like an online business, to start something that you can maybe sell a product or service that you can just do whenever you want. If you didn't know, Facebook has released a new feature called Shops. So if you're on Facebook watching this, it released a new feature called Shops. It's on Facebook and Instagram, I believe, where you can set up a shop right inside of Facebook, right? Very easy and very inexpensive. You can sell products that you want there. You can also look at other things like Shopify, like eBay. There's a bunch of sites like this where you can sell things. And depending on what you want to sell, there's going to be better things than other. Etsy's another good one, right? If you're going to sell, clothing, eBay, or there's another one called Poshmark that you can sell clothing on. If you have a bunch of old clothing that you don't need, if you're going to be leaving work right now because your job essentially forced you into retirement, think about selling all that professional clothing that you have because, hey, it's a great way to put money in your pocket, clean out your closet, and at the same time, you can do this from anywhere in the world. And, again, so Poshmark, eBay, Facebook, and Instagram, those are good places. And again, if you want to be a little fancier, Shopify is a wonderful place for you to set up a store there, okay? Beyond that, the other thing I want you thinking about is, if you haven't had good habits, okay? So this is for people that are kind of more than 5 years away from retirement. If you haven't had a good habit of saving and creating an emergency fund for yourself, now's the time, okay? If you are not taking now with this kind of crisis to take advantage of this time to get your habits in check, then it's most likely you never will, right? And what I've come to find after speaking with thousands of people of all different income levels, of when it comes to being successful financially, it is much more a behavioral issue than an income issue, right? It's much more about what you do with the money that comes in versus how much money you have coming in. Because if you're somebody that's sitting there and you go and look in your closet and you have designer clothes, designer shoes, the newest iPhone, you have the best Apple computer available, and you don't have 3 months of emergency money saved, that's a behavioral issue, okay? It's not a financial issue. So now's the time to take this time to really check in with yourself and ask yourself, are you stressing out right now? And are you sitting here, and if the government didn't give you this insane amount of unemployment income, because there's people right now that are on unemployment that are making $4,000 or $5,000 a month, but they were only making $2,000 a month before this happened. And this is your opportunity right here to take advantage of this extra money. And if you just go spend it all on doing silly things with this extra money that you have versus putting it aside into a savings account, then you kind of deserve what you get, out of that. That's what I'm going to say to that. Other things to think about. Your mortgage lender right now is going to freely allow you, most of them at least, to maybe skip 3 payments, right? So if you don't have an emergency fund in place, you might want to take advantage of that, right? The forbearance. There's some downsides of forbearance. You want to make sure you're not going to get a balloon payment at some point. Any of the good lenders are letting you move the payments to the back of the loan and just extending your loan. But I have heard about some doing balloon payments where at the end of 90 days, all that money is due. I don't think that's a good idea. Okay, don't do that. But if you could take an advantage right now if you have student loan payments, to skip those for 3 months or 6 months or whatever it is, to skip your mortgage payments for 3 months, to skip your car payments for 3 months, call and talk to your lenders and let them know you're experiencing financial difficulty if you are. And now would be the time to take that money and put that money aside in an emergency fund and just get that in place so that you have at least 3 months worth of expenses put aside in cash or cash equivalents that you do not touch except for emergencies. So again, this is not the ideal situation, honestly. I'd rather have you do this, over time, more importantly. But right now, we're still facing so much turbulence that this might be a good time for you to take some of this kind of CARES Act and stimulus opportunities to put yourself in a better financial position so that when you come out, you are better off than you were going in, okay? So don't waste this time and don't throw away this opportunity, okay? Next thing is now is the time to get out of surviving. Because if you made it to this point, okay, and you might have been going through a lot of mental things right now, thinking about fear and thinking about all the things that could happen. In most places, things are starting to open back up, right? Things are starting to get back to where they were. And there's going to be a lot of jobs that just don't exist or don't exist for a while. But I want you to start getting out of the mindset of surviving and living in fear. And I want you to start looking for opportunities and getting into thriving and finding and really discovering what things can you do, what benefits of this situation can you take advantage of based on your unique skill set that you can take a hold of and use now to generate extra income, to start a small business, to create another income stream so that you're not dependent on if you lose that one income stream, which might just be your job or your current business, that everything just goes away and now you have to go back in government assistance, okay? I also want you to really consider that if you're sitting here living on unemployment, that there is a lot of psychological things that you could be facing if you stay on unemployment too long. And I'm going to tiptoe around this because I know people might get a little bit upset, but it just kind of is what it is. If you stay on government assistance when you have the opportunity to go back to work, and you do that for too long, there's going to be a shift in your mindset that is going to be negative, okay? I think taking government assistance when you absolutely have to, okay, you know, that's one of those things. But I really, even if you're going to make less, I'd recommend that you get back to the mindset of getting to work, doing something productive, and not just sitting around all at home. If you can get past the fear of getting back into society, because long term, the psychological effect of getting that government assistance is going to set you up for failure. It just really is. So again, this is some behavioral finance stuff. Highly recommend you look into it. What I'm saying, there's a lot of research based on what I'm saying. But don't just take the government free money, because if you get stuck on that, it becomes like an addiction and it becomes something that you kind of depend on. And it's really going to put your mindset it could put your mindset into a bad place. So I definitely want you to think about getting back to working, being active, and thriving in this new economy in whatever way you can find in your unique situation. Okay. And on that same note, you have to remind yourself, okay, and you have to remember that your mind naturally is going to go to a place of trying to focus on safety, right, and not excellence. Okay, so if you're staying focused on safety, this is a place of fear. This is a place of scarcity. This is a place of worry. That if you are having these thoughts in your head, you have to understand that there is an energy around your finances. And I'm going to go woo-woo here a little bit, okay? But this stuff is real, okay? I believe it. There's an energy around your finances that if you are living in a place of fear and scarcity, you're going to repel any sort of big opportunities from a financial perspective that could come in. If you go to the other side where you're thinking about abundance and all the opportunities to come, and how if you made it through here, you should be so proud of yourself, and that it's now time to expand into this new economy and what opportunities do come, you're going to attract more opportunities to you. And I can pretty much guarantee that you'll be better off if you take that mindset of abundance and opportunity versus scarcity and safety. But you have to realize as well, we have this thing called the monkey mind, right? Or they call it I think they call it like the reptile mind or something like that. But it's called the monkey mind, where we as humans go to survival first versus expansion, right? So I want you to get out of survival and get into expansion and start looking for opportunities for what's in this new economy here, okay? All right. Next thing. What I want you to do as well is I want you to set your intention, okay? So I want you to set your intention for what you want your new normal to be, okay? Like I mentioned when I started this part of the discussion here, new normal could be something negative, right? You can think masks and fear and virus everywhere, don't touch anything, and blah, 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 blah. Or you can say, I'm going to get my crap in gear. I'm going to take advantage of if I have an opportunity to work from home or work from anywhere in the world, and I was happier doing this. I've talked to a lot of people that are so much happier and they're so much more productive without all the distractions in their normal workplace environment, that they're now going to expand into their new opportunity of working from home and taking advantage of that and moving their career down the field a lot faster. That could be your new normal. And that's what I really want you to get to. So part of that is starting by setting some goals, right? And goals, I think, are a very spiritual exercise to have. And you obviously need to start with writing down your goals, right? I think if you don't have written goals, you're not going to achieve them. It's going to be very much more difficult, right? But a goal is literally a projection of your life's intention into physical reality, right? So without written goals, you're very unlikely to achieve what you want. So again, your goals are literally a projection of your life's intention into your physical reality. So even if you don't know what is out there for you yet, you don't know what opportunities are out there for you yet, I want you to write down what your ultimate goals would be if you could have them. And whatever you want and if you could have this going into this new normal, I want you to write that down and start setting those intentions, because if you don't set those intentions, then you're not going to kickstart that projection of your life's intention to the new reality. So again, getting a little woo-woo here, but I think it's very important to talk about this stuff, okay? And the last thing I'm gonna leave you with here is never let a good crisis go to waste, okay? There's always opportunities in every crisis. If you're looking for a home, there's probably some opportunities for foreclosures that are gonna come up in the next year and a half. So there's good opportunities there. When the market was down 20, 30%, what I was doing was contacting my clients saying, hey, let's rebalance your accounts. Let's do your Roth conversion, because we're gonna convert over 30% more shares while the market's down. And when this bounces back, you're gonna have a lot more money in that Roth account that's gonna come back tax-free, right? So there's always opportunities regardless of whatever crisis you're facing. And if you faced a crisis like losing a job or something like that, well, think about this as an opportunity to now expand into the job that you always wanted, or to the career or the business you always wanted. So never let a good crisis go to waste, okay? So that's what I have for you today. And I'm going to shift over here into some questions and start talking about this stuff and see if I have anything here that you guys have. But I'm also going to leave you here with my website. If you have things that are on your mind when it comes to your finances with your retirement planning, if you want to put a proper retirement game plan in place, if you want to get all this set up and completely dialed in, and you want to discuss how to do it for yourself, then I'd love to invite you to book a call with me. And you go to keepitsimplefinancial.com/talk, and we can set up a 45-minute to an hour discussion to dig into your situation and help you create that high-level game plan for your new normal, what's going to come next. So let's talk about some questions here. Let's see what we got. Okay, so this is a great point here. So Nancy says, I wish I would have had planned earlier, right? So Nancy, this is what I'm talking about here. These are the things that are so important that everybody says, I wish. Not everybody, I should say. There's plenty of people that had a good plan in place. And I'll be honest with you, and this is not meant to be any sort of brag type of thing at all, but I had multiple clients reach out and say, I was very stressed out looking at the markets, but I went back to my financial plan that we created, and I saw that I was still in a really good position regardless if this market was down for the next year or two. And that brought so much peace of mind and confidence into our clients that have planned with us. So I definitely don't want you to be somebody that says you wish you planned earlier. Do this stuff sooner than later, okay? So Terrell, totally agree. This has been overblown. I totally think that the first 2 weeks to 4 weeks, like, we needed to do this, right? We needed to kind of pull back, assess, really see what was going on. But once we saw that things weren't nearly as bad as we thought, and the numbers to now are really nowhere near that, I think it is time to make some changes. And as we're seeing in some states that have opened up earlier, it's not anywhere near what they expected. California here, they're continuing to just crush small businesses because I think they're being overbearing with some of this opening up. But hey, teach their own. I don't want this to be an argument. Just my personal opinion that I think it has been overblown. I agree with you, Terrell. Let's see. Tammy, I love this. It's so wonderful to hear a positive spin versus the new normal rhetoric. Thank you so much. I agree. I think if you fall into this brainwashing, I think if you operate in a place from fear, right? This is what is wanted, and you open yourself up to be manipulated, okay? Living in fear is a really bad place to be, first of all, but it opens you up mentally to be manipulated by whatever else comes next. So I'm not saying, don't be cautious. I'm not saying don't be smart. I'm not saying don't wear your mask in the store or whatever it may be. All I'm saying is, if you think that the new normal is that you have to walk around in fear all the time, then that you open yourself up to more negative things. And if you just do what you got to do, stay focused on the positive and stay focused on moving forward and being proactive versus living in fear. So I appreciate that. So I see, so Scott, he's worked more during the crisis than I ever have. Scott, that's interesting. I'd love to know what you're doing for work, but I found myself like that as well. And so if you are still in a place where things are on lockdown and you haven't tried to improve your life, like, things I've really focused on are making my business more operationally efficient. I focused on getting myself in better shape. We've been tracking, my wife and I have been tracking our diet and everything that we have put into our bodies the last at least about 30 days now. We've done that. And what I've really seen is, initially when I got into this, I was gaining weight in my stomach and I was losing weight overall. That's not what you want because I wasn't going to the gym, excuse me. But now that we're tracking our diet, I'm making sure I'm getting the right amount of protein every day. I'm getting the right amount of fat and the right amount of carbs. And now that I've been tracking that, I've noticed my energy higher. My overall body has been in better shape. I still got a little bit more work to do. Okay, I'm not where I want to be yet. But I've noticed my mental clarity and my focus has been great. So, I've really focused on my diet improvements, my business improvements and things like that. So I would question you, what are some things that you've done to improve yourself and get yourself in a better mindset as we are going to this next step here, and we'll have still a little bit of downtime. Okay, let's see what else we got here. Okay, so Debbie asked, that's kind of small. I don't have an emergency fund. With mortgage interest rates so low, would refinance to get cash out be a good idea? So this is kind of a touchy subject, right? Because in reality, if you refinance your mortgage, you're going to go more into debt, right? To do this essentially, right? So if you have, let's say you owe $100,000 on your house and you want to have a $40,000 emergency fund, maybe your house is worth $300,000 or $400,000, you're going to add $40,000 to the debt you owe on your house. And it's probably going to be in the neighborhood of 3%. The other side of the equation is if you don't have an emergency fund of any sort and you can't make the payments on your home for some reason, then you might actually go into foreclosure, right? And so I think this is a really, really tough situation. And also credit has been tightening up as well when it comes to refinances. So I would actually start. Here's what I would start for you, Debbie. I would start with saying, if I were to do a really tight budget, okay, and you were to sit down and write down all of your expenses, and you look at the income you have coming in right now, and if you can save, 3 months of emergency fund over the next 12 months, if you cut down to nothing, okay, and I'm talking like just doing nothing for the next year, just giving up a year essentially of going out, giving up a year of buying $4, $5, $6 coffee, giving up a year of vacations. And if you can do this in 1 year or less, and you can get yourself to at least 3 months of expenses by cutting everything out, I would not refinance your home, okay? If your budget is so tight that even by doing that, you have no extra money aside, then I think you might want to consider that, taking some cash out and putting it to the side that you can access, or at least doing a line of credit, right? Getting some sort of line of credit in place on your mortgage that's at a low interest rate now, that if you needed money, you could tap it. So maybe you don't actually refinance the house, but maybe you can go check on a line of credit and see, do you have something, a little bit of credit line there that if something were to happen, you can tap on that. And you might want to do that anyways while you're building up your emergency fund. But that would put you in a place to where at least you don't have to lose your home, because I would hate to see that happen for you if you don't have the funds in place or over medical expenses. But if you can do this in a year or less, then I would not recommend refinancing your mortgage. I would say just bear down, get your stuff in place. I mean, ideally in 6 months would be the goal, but that's saving 50% of your income. If you did over a year to get the 3 months of expenses, that's 25% of your income, right, that you'd have to save. So I really want you to consider that. I'd also want you to visit, if you're contributing to retirement right now, whether you should continue to do that or if you should go to your emergency fund. So, so Debbie, just to kind of recap, if you can do this in a year or less, definitely don't refinance. If you want to put yourself in a position that if you were facing an emergency, you had some wiggle room there, then you might want to do a line of credit on your home and have that there. Do not touch that unless you absolutely need it or it's an emergency. But that would probably be my second recommendation before you thought about refinancing the home, because once you refinance the home, then you're for sure you have that debt there, and all you're really doing is moving money from one pocket to another. And so it's not really improving your situation. It's just making you feel a little bit better and getting a low interest rate loan at this point. So hopefully that helps you out. That's all the questions that I'm seeing for today. So I hope you guys found this useful, insightful, and found some benefit from it. If you want to schedule a call to chat, go to my website, keepitsimplefinancial.com/talk. You'll find my calendar page there. I'd love to chat with you and get you started on the process of putting a game plan in place for your retirement. Other than that, I'll wish you a wonderful Sunday. Have a great day, and we'll talk to you next time. All right? Bye-bye now.